What is happening, you beautiful bastards? Welcome back to another week. This week, you get to look at our two ugly mugs, and that's it.
Yeah, there's no guest this week. And again, that was intentional. It's one of those weeks where it's just Andy and I just shooting the breeze, talking about the things that interest us.
And as Jerry likes this one, we're calling it the State of the Union because we kind of hit everything that's fucked up with America right now.
We did. It's not so negative, though. I know you guys are probably familiar with the fact that Griz tends to go down a dark path on every episode. That wasn't so much the case here. We have some issues we discuss, but it's not doom and gloom.
We also, if you're listening to this one, check out the YouTubes because there's going to be a lot of videos in this one.
Yeah, and for those of you who don't want to check out the YouTube, we do a play-by-play.
That's true, we do.
Not something we've usually done.
Jerry does a voiceover.
Not something we've done, in the past, but I figured it seemed appropriate. We streamed a video that we were watching while we were recording. I knew you guys at home without the YouTubes couldn't see it, so I wanted to make sure you understood what we were looking at.
What is happening, you beautiful bastards? All right, so on December 3rd, tears of joy ran down Ryan Brandon's face after she and another server received a huge tip to split. They waited on a group of 30 plus, which was 40, by the $100 club, because everyone tips $100 at the end of the meal. Interesting. Happy tears soon turned to tears of sorrow when she was fired from the restaurant. She was told that she was going to be giving my cash over to my shift manager and I would be taking home 20%.
That's it?
Yeah. And so that means the other person was taking home 20%.
Yeah.
And then to me that just sounds like so fucking the managers be greedy as shit. She said she told the $100 club that she wouldn't be able to keep her portion of the money without splitting it with the entire restaurant, which she said led to her firing. Brandon and her attorney signed a release that permitted both owners to share why she was fired, but they still said it wasn't their place to comment. The employee was terminated. The employee that was terminated was not terminated for retaining the tip due to the privacy and respect, blah, 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 lawyer bullshit.
Yeah.
But that gets in. There's several fucked up things here. So you want people to tip them for them to make their money, but then when they make the fucking tip, you don't want to. Like, and I know some restaurants work that way where they tip everyone. Like Dunkin' Donuts does that, right?
Right. Yeah, they split the jar.
Just do it. Yeah.
No, I actually, I've always been kind of confused about how that whole group tipping thing works because my first job, I think I was 13 or 14, I cleaned tables at a restaurant. It's just a little pizza joint, nothing crazy. And there were, like every restaurant group of waitresses, they all got a table. It's not like they were sharing tables.
Yeah.
But when that table left a tip for that waitress, it went into a pool. And at the end of the night, they'd split it all, which to me is kind of like, it's kind of like a shitty modern union where whoever is the worst employee gets the same as the best employee. Well, I don't think it's very fair.
The whole idea of tipping, right, was to get people to do a better job. At their job. Well, so why did tipping start in the first place then?
It's a pretty in-depth story. It has its roots in class warfare, like most things do in America. Mm. But what do you think the origin of tipping is, if you had to take a guess?
Like I said, I would say part of it is just trying to get people to do a better job. You're in charge of your own somewhat destiny.
So this happened.
I would never do it myself. Fuck that.
This started in around the 1850s, 1860s, okay, in the United States. And that was wealthier people. Kind of borrowed this from medieval times with the whole master and serf dynamic. Mm-hmm. So in medieval times, a master would have his serfs I don't think they had female masters then. So his serfs would come and do their work. And if they did a superb job, he would give them an extra shekel or whatever they use for money.
Which is fine. That makes sense.
Which is fine. I mean, there are issues with the fact that they were serfs, but if they did an extra good job, they got an extra good pay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in the 1850s and 60s, the American aristocrats, if you're familiar with them, they are like the early American version of royalty. Just rich people, basically. They thought that was pretty cool, and they wanted to feel even cooler. So they started doing that here and there. And it was pretty divisive because they were trying to essentially establish a norm that no one could afford.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like a big issue back then because normal people that wanted to go out, like let's say me and you versus Bill Gates, that's the dynamic difference.
Mm-hmm.
In the 1850s and 60s, you and I couldn't go to a restaurant at our current economic scale and leave a tip. It just wasn't affordable.
Yeah.
So them trying to establish that on the upper levels of American wealth, it presented a problem to normal people, for one. So that was always a fight. But what ended up happening was restaurant owners, who were typically white people in the 1800s, they ended up employing a lot of black people. And because they did not want to pay them, for one, they knew that people didn't want to tip at the time. So they told a lot of their black employees, and of course there were white employees too, they didn't treat them a whole lot better in terms of pay. So when they ended up in this situation where they could lower their wages and tell them you have to get tips as well, it allowed them to pay them less and make more money without having to change any other dynamic in their business.
Mm-hmm.
So it was this weird thing that rich people started because they thought it was cool, trickled down to poor people who couldn't afford to do cool shit, and then turned into a race issue where they said, well, we could take this situation and stop paying people what we're paying them. That's basically a long story cut down to just a couple of minutes here.
Yeah, you paraphrased.
Yeah, I paraphrased a lot. That's the gist of it, though.
I don't think nowadays. I think obviously we're not tying it to racism.
Right now it's like a lot of things.
Been.
It started with racism, but now it's shifted into a weird class thing. So if you're a waitress. In the 90s, you were making like $2 an hour getting tips. Now I think you're making...
I think it's $4 something.
Yeah, now you're making a little more than $2 an hour. But there's a lot of places that have shifted to paying people a normal hourly rate and still getting tips, which that is really weird to me.
Why?
Because
I'm fine with if you want to tip people, but the problem is we have this conception right now where if you go to a restaurant, no matter what, you have to tip.
Right. And that... to me is problematic because, for one, if I go to a restaurant and the staff that works there is paid a fair wage, let's say they make $15 an hour or whatever, we'll debate whether or not that's a fair wage another day. They're not making $2 an hour trying to live off tips. $15 an hour was established as that's your wage.
Yeah,
I shouldn't have to tip.
Places like that will put it up. You know what I'm saying? They'll say like right out the bat, they'll be like, hey, we pay our people a fair wage, so no tipping.
Right, but it's been established since the 1800s that tipping is the norm. If you don't tip in America, you're viewed as an asshole. But if you go to anywhere else in the world, almost anywhere, I'm sure there are other places that tip. It's really weird if you tip. It's actually offensive. And actually in the 1800s when it started, one of the issues was it was viewed as condescending, which I still think is really the case if you consider what that dynamic looks like. It's basically let's say you go to a restaurant and you make more than a waitress. She has to work her ass off, like be extra special to get a decent tip.
Yeah. Well, not with me, but okay.
I'm just going with averages here. You're a different beast. I always tip well because I know that it's a fucked up dynamic and they need to get paid.
But
I don't like
that's
tipping.
A lot of people.
Now it's a lot of people, but that hasn't always been the case. I don't think it's very fair to them that they should feel like they have to go well above and beyond to make their decent living. Their job is to bring me my food and whatever my drinks are and make sure that I have what I need. I don't need them to come...
To me, like, I have no problem with them being paid a fair wage. And then I'd
Yeah.
love to get to the point where it's like, hey, you went above and beyond, or you did something special where I want to give you a tip. That's fine.
Hmm.
That's where I think you could be anywhere. But there are two people tip some of the strangest fucking things in this world.
What do you mean?
Like, I mean, I for the longest time, well, I still don't. All the Dunkins in our area, and I don't go to Dunkin' that often. A lot of them don't do tipping, right? They won't allow it. So when I go to another one, I don't ever tip. And not to mention them, usually they're not making what's the wage called that's for waitress or waiter? You know what that is? I don't know, but either way, so I don't tip them. And to me, a lot of times, like anything in the food service is usually a tip, right? Like if I'm going to a restaurant, I'm
Hmm.
going to tip you, and I'm probably
Right,
going to tip
because
you pretty good
because
unless you fucking blow.
as Americans, it's established in our life that if you go to a food establishment, they're
Mhm.
not they're not really paid very well. So
Yeah,
we tip them to make
exactly.
up for their boss not wanting to pay them.
Which is fucking
That's not right.
agree.
Now,
Um,
I don't want people listening to confuse this with the fact that Griz and Gerry don't tip, because as we've said, we tip very well because
oh
we
yeah,
recognize the fucked up
dude,
dynamic.
you have to fucking bomb bad for me to not tip you. I mean, even if
Right.
you suck something fucking awful, I'm still gonna
Hmm.
tip you. I might not tip you great, but I'm still gonna tip you. You have to fucking. I think I've only not tipped once in a
Hmm.
restaurant, and they
Now,
like,
let's dissect that for a second here.
yep,
You went to a restaurant and had shittiest service of your life and decided not to tip.
hmm
Now, whoever it was it a waiter or a waitress?
think it was a waitress.
Okay,
Or it
so
was a long time ago.
this waitress, let's call her Rachel.
Hmm,
So
good name.
Rachel sucks at being a waitress for you.
Maybe it was just that day.
That's what I'm about to say. So maybe she had a really shitty day. Maybe her mom died and she had to go to work.
Yeah, maybe possible.
Now, because of that, she made, I'm sure you're not the only one she was giving shitty service to that day. She made
Mm.
almost nothing that day because
Mhm.
she had to go to work when her mom died.
Oh yeah. Listen. I don't agree with it by any means.
Yeah.
I would love to get out of it. I just think if we can get to a point where it's like people are making a normal livable
Hmm.
wage
Hmm.
on that, whatever that may be, and then on top of that, if you want to tip, go ahead and tip. I just think it being the norm and you paying them versus the company paying them is a fucked up idea.
Yeah. And I actually hear a lot of what I consider bullshit, which is let's go with a 60-year-old ultra conservative who doesn't think that that person should get a raise because they get tips. I think they're kind of short-sighted in the whole grand scheme of this, but their argument, if I were to say to them, we shouldn't tip anymore, they should just get paid more money.
Mhm.
Well, their argument's going to be, well, then they would raise the rates of everything. First of all, I don't care if they raise the price of a plate. It's already crazy money anyway.
Well, I mean, they're doing it right now as it is. I mean,
Hmm.
just on inflation this year, it's going up. But even on top of that, we've seen companies boost their wages of their employees and not raise their rates, but that's because they're not trying to be greedy as fuck. And also, if you pay your employees better, you're going to get better output.
Yeah, that gives me it sparks an interesting thought here that I've had many times about I guess wage inflation, how it hasn't kept up with anything.
Yeah,
And
here's
so
go on. You do your thing.
so a lot of companies, especially now after COVID happened, and they realize that they can still make the same money with less employees without giving raises and just basically working their employees to death.
Hmm
A whole separate set of issues, but they are considering themselves making record profits. But a lot of that short-sightedness is it's not really record profits, it's just record savings. So if you had to lay off 25% of your workforce during COVID,
Mm.
that's going to look like record profits because you spent 25% less money on wages. But if you look at every instance in history in America where wages were raised across the board and benefits were improved, and everybody made more money on like an hourly employee level,
Mm.
every single time it has increased productivity and increased employee retention, which, if you don't know anything about employee retention and high turnover rate, it's incredibly, incredibly expensive for any company.
And right now, I don't know. I mean, Jerry and I have been at the same job now 6 years for me.
I think you were a little longer. I started in 2017.
Okay. But before that, I was at a company for 8 years.
Hmm.
And Jerry, you were there for how long? Fucking since you were born or some shit?
No, it wasn't that bad. So the one before that, I was there for 4 years. The one before that, I was there for 7 years.
Okay. So it's not like we rotate that quick. But some people, if you talk to like boomers, we probably rotate. Like you talk to my dad. My dad was with the company for 25 years.
Hmm.
Like, and
Well,
fine.
there's
I
no
don't have an
reason
issue
to
with that.
now. There's no reason to.
Well, so that's the thing. Nowadays, there's nothing holding you at a company that long because
Mhm.
no one's getting a pension.
Mhm.
Your 401k rolls with you. But on top of that, dude, you talk to any company, right? They are a revolving door right now.
Hmm.
It is ridiculous. It's just up, boom, in, out. It's a year. To find someone who spent over a year somewhere is ridiculous.
Yeah,
It's hard to
with
find.
very few exceptions. Now, there's a lot of issues that cause that. What do you
Mhm.
think is like a couple of the driving factors for this retention issue nationwide? Because it's clearly a national problem in America.
I think part of it is that's how people are getting their raises,
I
right?
think
They go to a new
that's
company,
probably
they
the
get a
biggest
bump.
one.
I don't know. I think a big part of it is the fact that you don't have a pension, right? So like
Yeah, that's
before
true.
where your boss pissed you off or a coworker pissed you off or whatever,
Hmm.
you'd be like, I'm gonna hold it out because at the end of this, I can retire.
Hmm.
Where now it's like, you know what, fuck you. I'm taking it with me. Like, what are they
Yeah,
gonna do?
yeah. Because now we have IRAs and 401ks,
Mhm.
maybe a few weird outlying things, but generally that's what everybody has in America now, and
Mhm.
that can roll over. Doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
So
You don't even get penalized.
if I got 100,000 in my 401k, my current employer, and I leave, I just got to call whoever my account is with and say, hey, roll it over to this one.
Mhm.
And you don't even pay a penalty. It just moves.
Yep. I did it
So,
when I went over to where we are now.
yeah. So you had, what was holding you at your old employer? Nothing.
Nothing at all. Other than like I worked there for years and it was a decent job. It's just my boss was driving me nuts. And
Now,
he's a good dude, don't get me wrong, but I finally was just like, fuck this.
yeah, I
My
know the feeling.
quality of life was in the tubes. And I was like, I'll take a pay cut and my quality of life will go up.
I actually did take a pay cut and my quality of life
I did too.
dramatically improved.
Yeah.
What was my pay cut? Probably 10,000 ish for the year. That was
Yeah,
my
that's
pay
probably
cut.
about what I was.
I don't
Which in
remember the
the end
exact
I
number
ended up
anymore.
making it back anyways, but
Yeah,
like
but my big issue, which actually, so this will come right back to trades, which you and I both came from before we went to where we are now. There's a huge issue with trades. The reason that I left the trades is because it's very pervasive in your life if you're not in a very specific segment of whatever trades you're in. Like
what
electricians
do you
have it pretty well. So their schedule is pretty set. They work their 8 hours and they leave. I was in service industry, so commercial and industrial HVAC service.
yeah,
So for
which
those
is
of you that
fuck.
don't know, that's anything mechanical in a building, whether it's moving water, moving air, heating or cooling something, really anything. If it's a moving part and it's in a building, I had to work on it and make sure it stayed that way, make sure it stayed operating. As the service side of that industry, they would never leave me the fuck alone. I was always on call. I'd get called out at 2 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday. It's just absurd. Now, as a younger guy, for one, I had better shit to do than go work all day beyond 8 hours. Sometimes I had worked 16-hour days before. If you're in a trade, a lot of times you don't have the option of saying, I'm going to finish this tomorrow. Because most of the time, if you're stuck there, it has to be done.
Yeah.
Something bad will happen if it's not done. So that was why I switched. I took a pay cut, and when I leave work is not with me. It never comes home with me. Even now, working from home, it does not come home with me.
Yeah, that was a big part of why I left too, though. I mean, I remember getting called in on my days off because
Yeah.
I was a mechanic for trucks and something would break and they'd call me on my day off. And finally
Mhm.
it was, I want to say it was like my last 6 months or something. They called me on one of them. I was like, no, I'm not coming in. I'm going to come in. You're going to be pissed at me because something broke. I'm going to be pissed because I'm there on my day off. And my wife's going to be bullshit because I'm there on my day off too. Fuck no.
Exactly. Yeah, I think the last straw for me was I was working in an Ivy League school actually, and I had to do some process cooling for their data center. So this big system that integrated with a lot of different shit, a lot of building automation. It had to work very precisely every time it needed to work. It had to be seamless. Unfortunately, that's like really niche. You know what I mean? Like not every HVAC guy could do that.
Yeah, no.
It's like a small group of people, like industry wide in the area that I live, that could do it. At the company, the only person that had worked on that was me and my boss. And my boss, he's not going to go anywhere. He's not going out. He's already done that for the last 30 years. He's not doing it anymore. I wasn't even on call. And something happened to this data center system. And he called me and said, listen, I understand you're not on call, but literally nobody else can do this. Can you please go, there's an hour and a half from my house, and make this work again? Now, I could have said no. But if you've ever worked in a dynamic like that, saying no is not like a real option. You know what I mean?
I always took those scenarios and took advantage of them.
Oh yeah, I definitely took advantage of it. I got paid a lot that day to do it. But the issue is, if I did not do that, it would have been a catastrophic issue. I would have ended up getting fired.
I don't know if you would have gotten a fire, but you'd catch a lot of flack.
Yeah, it was just bullshit. It's actually easier to go do that. But the problem was, I was at a birthday party. So yeah, reluctantly, I was like, all right, boss man, I like you. We're borderline friends. I'll go take care of this. And so I did. And after that, I was there that day when I was at the site working on it. I was like, you know what? I'm done with this shit. And so I started looking for a new job.
There you go. There's my favorite saying of all time is the best whore gets fucked the most.
Yes. And if you're really good at something that not a lot of other people can do, you could make a lot of money, and you will almost definitely get screwed.
Oh, that's what the saying is. You're gonna get fucked. But I mean, so here's one thing with the whole wages thing, and not getting away from the turnover stuff.
Yep.
A lot of stuff that, because they want to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour, which if that's what it is for people to live a life that's like can actually afford anything, great. Like
I don't think that even does it in
I'm not here
places.
to say that that's the number or not anything like that. But let's say let's say that number hits it, right? A lot of people are making $15 an hour right now doing jobs that have taken, training, college to a degree. I mean, how many resumes have you seen where they have a college degree and it's $15 an hour, which is ridiculous?
Yeah.
So now all of a sudden those people who are making $15 an hour are like, wait a minute, I'm dealing with all this bullshit. Are they going to go to these other jobs? That's where I think a lot of the thinking goes.
Well, this might sound a little bit conspiracy theory-ish of me. I think that attitude has been kind of fed to the American people. So a lot of times I hear the argument from people who say the minimum wage shouldn't be $15 an hour because then it devalues my work for the wage that I make. That's not really a valid argument if you step back and think about the bigger picture. They can't live on what they're making. They need a raise. That doesn't mean, just because you aren't getting a raise doesn't mean they shouldn't. It means you should also get a raise.
Yeah.
It's the way that the media has pitched this whole thing because, in my opinion, the government and the media are two sides of the same coin. What that dynamic really looks like, I don't know. But they work in tandem with dividing the country.
Well, so there comes the thing, though. Like, I want people to make money to live a good life. Absolutely. I want people to afford their housing, all that shit. But to me, in my head, there's always a point where you sit there and you go, where's the money coming from? Right?
Yes, that's another issue that I've had with a lot of socialist policies. Obviously, we don't have socialist policies in place, but there's a lot of younger people pushing for them. I understand the concept of things like human rights. Like they think everyone deserves the right to healthcare and housing. I guess that's kind of a gray area for me because, yeah, I can agree with that. But the problem is who's going to pay for that? And they do call that like a non-argument. But at the end of the day, where's the money coming from?
Yeah. I see. The healthcare thing I find funny, right?
Yeah,
Because I think you could get away with the healthcare.
definitely. I think
So
that
many
in this
states
country
are
we could
already
easily
doing it.
change that. They don't want to.
Well, the argument is always who's going to pay for it, right?
Right,
But
right.
many states that are in the black, not in the red, have healthcare for everyone. It's just
I'm not familiar with that, so
well, it's not
maybe
that
you're
it's
right. I don't
healthcare
know.
for everyone. They have healthcare for if you're under a certain rate, under a wage, right? So it's already being paid for.
Oh yeah, so like Connecticut's a good example because if you're under a certain wage, you have the best healthcare that you can get in this state.
But that's my point, and that
Yeah.
it's not just Connecticut. That's
I'm just using Connecticut as an example. That's
yeah,
where I
yeah.
live.
But so that's my point. So it's already being paid for. Now Connecticut's got a lot of issues with high taxes, and no one
Mhm.
wants to live there because it's a fucking black hole of misery and pain.
Well,
But
the
there are
biggest
other
issue is we are a
places in the
suburb.
country.
The entire state is a suburb for New York and Boston. That's
Um,
that's the issue with Connecticut. And as a
there's
Connecticut
more than that.
resident, I know that for certain. And there's a problem when your entire state is a suburb. It sucks.
You have cities, but they're not really cities. But
No,
anyways,
they're not
but
cities.
we could shit on Connecticut for days.
We can, but let's stay on topic here.
My point is that they already have
Yeah.
healthcare.
Yes, they do.
It's already covering a shit ton of people. It's already being paid for.
Mhm.
And on top of that, you're paying for your own healthcare. So
Mhm.
what would change if it just covered everyone? To me, you'd all of a
That's a
sudden
good
see a
question.
drop in prices because now you go from where an insurance company is billing a doctor and they're trying to make as much money as possible. Now
Mhm.
you have the government being like, no. Like
Yeah,
the
actually, that's a
difference in
good point.
prices
So,
are fucking
um,
wild.
I do commercial video work. So I'll make like ads for companies or whatever. And I had a meeting over the summer with a company who does medical services.
Mhm.
Their biggest clients, like their most like their largest group of clients demographic is paid for by the state. Whether they're prisoners or low income people, whatever it is, the bulk of their clients, their bill is paid by the state.
Yep.
And they actually approached me about it because they wanted a new target audience with this video to bring in people that had private insurance, not state.
Mhm.
And the reason for that is because it's a significantly higher amount of money that they can charge.
You want to know what the perfect analogy is there? If
What?
if you ever called to get your windshield replaced and
Yeah.
haven't told them whether you have insurance or not, you ever done that?
Yeah.
Yeah, when they nowadays the windshields are a lot more expensive, but
Mhm.
it used to be that you'd call and say, "Oh, I need my windshield replaced," and they'd say, "Oh, it's $100,
Mhm.
right? Oh, I have window insurance. Oh, all right, we have to do this fucking three-way phone call with your insurance company, and they
Yeah.
charge the insurance company $400.
Yep.
So I mean, and that's what's happening, and you're paying for it in the end.
Yeah. And so there are very few like socialist agendas that I agree with, but things like the healthcare system that we have now in terms of insurance, for the most part, I can get behind the socialist movement that it should be for everybody. And there's
I think the healthcare thing might get there if people weren't fighting. Like
yeah.
if lobbyists weren't fighting for it to go the other way so bad.
hmm Well,
Like,
that's going to cost insurance companies a lot of money,
yeah, oh, absolutely. They're making money. I mean,
and it's going to force places like really shitty hospitals to budget correctly.
on the subject of lobbyists, did you hear what California is doing with like gun bans?
No, but I did hear about their housing proposition 9. We want to touch on that for a minute.
Sure, what's that?
So before we get into the gun topic, this is a lot to do with the cost of living and wages, which we were just talking about.
Which
California.
could all be solved by just cutting off California.
No. California's an extreme example of what's actually happening nationwide. So we're going to see that in the next 10 years, that the housing issues in California
Mhm.
are spreading like a disease. And it's not just because
California
they're
is a-
fleeing their state. Those of you who don't know about a little bit of history on California's housing market, there are a key couple of things that caused it to be what it is, where a 1,000 square foot ranch is $600,000. Not really feasible to maintain like a middle America. So in, I think it was 1978, they passed Proposition 13.
Mm.
Proposition 13 says whatever price you purchased your house for the duration of your ownership is what you'll be taxed on. So boomers in 1978, in their early life, started their family and bought a nice little house for $30,000 to $60,000. It's a super nice place. Some of them, I would say probably most of them, that are still living, still own that same house. It's never changed hands. It's currently worth $1 million. They're still paying the taxes on the initial purchase price. So the second issue is a series of what they call not in my backyard laws. And that extends all the way down to individual municipal zoning laws. A major issue with Californians is a lot of them are liberal, which isn't the issue itself. They want to give everybody things for free.
Yeah.
It's very idealistic, very nice of them, but the problem is they don't want to actually pay for it. And a lot of you guys who might be liberals are going to come after me for this, but if you look at California and the way that they've implemented things over the last 40 years, all you have to do is look at their policies and you can see that that's true.
I mean, anyone who knows California knows that's how it's going.
Yeah. So what happens with the not in my backyard laws? They create massive sprawling suburbs, which we all have seen pictures of or videos of or even been there. They're all single family homes. They're all zoned that way. You're not allowed to build multifamily units on any of their properties. So there's actually been a number of cases over the last 20 years where someone managed to get that approved for a parcel of land, and the not in my backyard crowd, which is all the suburbanites that live in these big neighborhoods, got those shut down because they did not want to devalue their property, which is it's good in theory, but if your property is too expensive for someone to buy it, what does it matter what it's worth, you know?
Yeah,
Now,
well, there's that.
Then you come up to what they just passed, and Gavin Newsom has gotten a ton of shit for this and a ton of support. It's very divisive. It's Proposition 9.
Mm-hmm.
What this does is it's kind of, in a way, taking a lot of that municipal power away for how they use land, and essentially forcing a lot of these areas to allow building multifamily units. And that the intention is to create more houses and places for people to live, because they're about 3.5 million houses short of what the population needs. It's like the number is somewhere around like 4 or 5 people to a dwelling, when a manageable number is 2.5-ish people. So like, if you know, a small family.
But I mean, we even see that around us. Like you're.
Well, that's why I said
maybe
California
not
is a simple. It's like a
Connecticut because no one wants to live there, but the rest of the world,
yes.
you're seeing these apartment buildings and shit like that fly up everywhere, because otherwise you can't afford a house or afford a place to live.
Right, and
unless you want to live in a city.
I think the concept, though, while it's good in California, I don't think it'll work.
Right.
There's a couple of different issues, but the main one, there is no provision in Proposition 9 saying that what they build has to be affordable. And that's one of the issues they've had this whole time. People build condos or apartments all the time in California.
Yep.
They're all luxury condos. I actually just looked at rent there yesterday. A 3-bedroom condo. It's not even near the water. It's just a decent condo. It was about $4,000 a month. I don't know many people that can afford that.
No, that's more than my mortgage.
Now, as listeners, you may be wondering, Jerry, you live in Connecticut. Why do you know so much about California housing?
Because he wants to go to California.
Because I want to live there, and I can't because they're fucking assholes.
I don't know why you want to live there, Jerry. You would just die. I mean,
tell me more.
Pollution and your bitch internals and shit like that.
Okay.
So their housing problems aside, because the problem is a lot of people go to California because there's a lot of people who think, oh, I'm going to make it big, and they never have.
Yeah, the issue
End
is
up
a
living
supply
out
and
of
demand
cars
problem.
and things like that. Which we learned about is fine. But like, so I guess Connecticut's thing is they're now trying to do their normal go after guns law, where they're trying to ban everything and anything. And they're trying to go after it in the same way that Texas went after abortion, and hoping that they can get around it to where the Supreme Court won't be able to block them.
Wait a second. Did they also put out bounties?
I don't know.
You heard about that in Texas, right, with the abortions?
Yeah.
You get like $5,000 if you turn someone in.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But they haven't actually done it yet, but that's the way they're trying to go at it.
Now, is this California, you said?
Yeah.
Interesting. So did they pass it, or is it just a proposal?
No, this is just rumors that they want to do it.
Mm.
There's
See,
a lot of gun owners in California.
oh yeah, yeah. So obviously, we had just mentioned that everyone thinks of liberals when they think of California, but it's when you think of California, you think of really three places, maybe four: San Francisco, L.A., and San Diego. Sometimes Sacramento. Those are all pretty liberal places, but they're anywhere that's not a central hub like that with major city, they're pretty conservative. There's a lot
That's
of
the way it
people
is
out in the middle
everywhere.
of nowhere who want to shoot shit.
But I mean, you look at most states, when you look
Hmm.
at like the voting stuff, the
Yeah.
cities are blue and the rest of it's red.
Yeah, and if you guys recall back in our episode with the conservative, what was his name? Uh, he actually had talked about breaking up California into smaller states, which it'd probably be easier to just change the representation to be more appropriate. That's the major issue they have. Those central liberal areas are so densely populated that they incredibly outnumber the conservative neighbors around them in the rural areas. So when you think about California and gun ownership, it's actually there's a lot of guns in California.
There is. They just have to deal with a lot of bullshit, or they get
A
around
lot
it.
of hoops to jump through, even here in Connecticut. And I don't have any guns in my house right now. I don't have a permit.
Taylor was his name.
Yes, Taylor, that's right. On Contrera, the podcast Contrera.
Contreras, yep.
Contreras, that's right. So he was a good guy to talk to about that because he had a really like a broader perspective on representation there. But again, it's clouded how many guns are actually in California because of their crazy laws and their massive liberal representation.
Well, you look at Massachusetts. Massachusetts is right behind them, right? As far as
Hmm.
like liberal tendencies, most of the time.
Yeah.
There's a shit ton in Mass too. But
Hmm.
depending on what part you're at, right? The
Right.
western half of Massachusetts is fucking where like the right hand side is suits and ties in the city.
I don't know. I'm not like a huge gun nut myself. I value the Second Amendment. I think that we should keep it. And as someone who almost doesn't give a shit if I ever own a gun, I don't think that we should be making it this out of control for gun laws because they're not helping anything.
No, but I think a lot of it comes down to like it's almost like a tribal thing, man.
Yeah.
I mean, even with politics, it's just they dig in so hard to their side and they have to push their side on you for whatever
Hmm.
reason. I don't understand it.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you don't.
There's a big issue with this big split in the country right now. Like
Mm,
even if you're not on a side, if you're not liberal and you're not conservative, neither side wants you.
well, I don't think I brought it up on the show yet. What I told you about it the other week, where it's like, if your opinion is differing right now,
Hmm.
you're not allowed to have it.
Yes. And that
Like,
it depends on
and
what crowd you're in. Just if you're in any crowd
yeah,
that has strong ideologies and you don't agree with them,
mhm.
you are a problem.
Yeah, it's not even like let's have a conversation where we can figure out where you went wrong or anything like that if you even
Hmm.
did go wrong. It's like a 0 to fucking 100, hair's on fire and I explode. And it's like
Yeah,
it's almost like a little kid temper tantrum.
it
You
is.
know what I'm saying?
And it creates a lot of issues because whether you're conservative or liberal, whatever it may be, whatever your ideology is, a lot of times if you dig into it, there's some good stuff in there. But if
Mm,
you on its face disagree with it, you never get that far.
no.
So let's talk about liberals because I know many of them who are hardcore.
Mhm.
Um, they have a serious branding issue.
What do you
Things
mean?
like all cops are bastards. ACAB.
Well, so that's where this whole conversation kind of started because I was at a
Yeah,
family party and one woman basically said she was conservative.
yeah, yeah.
And another woman was like immediately 0 to 100. She's like, "Oh, if you're conservative, I basically can't stand you," and
Hmm.
like screamed and walked away. And I was just
Yeah,
like, whether you're conservative, liberal, or whatever, like I don't give a fuck where you stand, but you couldn't like literally. My 7-year-old has a better conversation than that. Like there was no give and take. It's just I'm gonna explode and walk away.
well, thanks to social media, that's my opinion. Thanks to social media, it's a cult mentality in every organization. But
Mm,
back to what I was saying with liberals and their branding issues.
mhm.
If you don't agree with everything they say on and take it for face value, like all cops are bastards, which is ACAB. I just learned about this, actually. I didn't even know what it was for a long time.
Oh, they made an acronym. There's an acronym for
Yeah.
everything right now.
So
man.
this acronym, ACAB, all cops are bastards. I heard that, and my immediate response was, I don't agree with that. Fortunately, it was one of the very few people who can actually have that conversation, even though they firmly believe in that ideology.
Audience,
So here's
I'm
the
gonna
issue with
break the
ACAB.
fourth wall here. Like 3 months ago, Jerry would have agreed with him. And then we
Sort
met.
of. But if you listen to the way that they talk about all cops are bastards,
Mhm.
they think that every single cop in every single municipality is a problem and they should be disbanded. That's what you think when you hear all cops are bastards, and that's what the media is saying. That's not what they think.
Mhm.
That's their branding issue. Their issue is there's a lot of serious issues in police forces nationwide, and that's
Yeah.
true.
Oh,
They need
absolutely.
a lot of, in my opinion, they need a lot of funding and a lot of training, and they need to get better at a whole ton of things that they do wrong. And
Well,
that's roughly what ACAB means. But because of the way that they approach it and the way that they label it, a conservative who hears that says, we have a problem, and that's as far as this conversation is going to go.
yeah. About a week ago, I saw a video where it's 2 cops rolling up on a guy. He's in a motorized wheelchair. He has a knife,
Mm-hmm.
and they yell at him not to go back into what looks like Wally World or maybe Lowe's, but I'm pretty sure it was Wally World.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the cops just fucking unloads on this guy.
What, like his weapon?
Yeah, like
Oh,
10
Jesus
rounds.
Christ.
Yeah, we should probably put the video up. So my comment to this was, well, because in these scenarios, I'm not going to judge, right? I wasn't there. I don't know what the fuck's going on. So I said, give me some more context here.
Mm-hmm.
And someone's response was, what context would make this right? And I said, none that needs to, but I want more information. Like, if you just told me this guy just fucking murked 30 people, sure, fucking blow him to hell. Why would I care? Right? Why would you care? But the problem is we're in this point in society where it's like, nope, he's a cop. He shot someone. He's a bad guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that cop could have been dead wrong. I have no clue. I wasn't there. I don't have any more info. But it's immediately up. They're an asshole because they're a cop. I know plenty of good cops. I also know plenty of dick cops that should not be a cop.
Mm-hmm. And that, as Griz was talking about a minute ago, my history with the police force has not been positive, which is why, generally speaking, I don't like cops. It doesn't mean I don't support police force. What it really means is I think that they have a lot of fucked up issues, and they're really bad at hiring people who should be cops. I've met a lot of cops who really shouldn't have had a badge.
Let me share screen, bitch.
All right, so what are we looking at here? So, audio listeners, I will break down what we're seeing here. Arizona officer steps out of his car and he's running towards a guy on a hover-round who looks like a fisherman. He's got the fishing hat. The cop's got his gun out. And
Oh, they didn't even show it.
no, they kind of skipped to the part where the guy on the hover-round fell over. Let's see
Yeah,
here.
dude, he gets
You
fucking
got
lit up.
an inside view. Oh, man. Yeah, he was that didn't look like they needed to be shot. Again, we don't really have the whole story here, but from my point of view just now, I watched this dude on a hover-round hauling ass into the garden center of Walmart, and the cops shot him from like a 45-degree angle behind him.
Like 4 feet away. And so, like, all right, in this scenario, yeah, the cop was probably wrong. Do I have the background info there? No.
It looked wrong from the video that I just watched, but
absolutely.
like you said, maybe he murked 30 people on the way in.
But then, the lesson in this story.
Yeah.
Same week, did you see the one about the cop kicking the dog?
Yeah, I didn't watch the video because I love puppies, but I did read the article.
So so the internet blew up on this cop. For those of you who don't know, internet blows up. There's a video. It's a ring cam of a porch, and should probably pull this up too.
Bring up the video, Griz. Let's see that feed.
Bring all this shit up. So anyways.
So Griz, what are we looking at here?
So you got a patio, right? and
Yeah.
you got a cop coming up. It's a ring cam, and as the cop gets to the top of the patio, he comes up the stairs. He starts kicking the shit out of the dog.
Yeah, he is
Right?
kicking the shit out of him.
Yeah, he kicks the fucking ever living piss out of that dog. Right?
Yeah.
So the internet blows up, being like, "Fuck this cop. He should be fired." Blah blah
Mm-hmm.
blah. And this is exactly my point here. Is where their knee jerk reaction, right? Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Look, if looking at the first bit, yep, it looks like this cop's being a dick. He's an
Mm-hmm.
asshole and he should be fired, right?
Yeah.
Come to find out, that cop's been attacking kids up and down the street, and the cops are called to
You mean the
go
dog?
yeah, sorry, that yeah, the cop's been
Okay.
attacking kids.
That we got some serious issues if that cop's attacking kids up and down the street.
So the dog it's a pit bull and it's been attacking kids on the street.
Yeah.
And the cop's been called to deal with the dog, and the dog goes and lunges at the cop, so the cop kicks the dog. So now who's the asshole now? All of us for reacting and saying the cop's a bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, we as a society right now, we're so knee-jerk on everything when we don't have the info, and we're just willing to fucking up. We're literally writing people off, saying they need to get fired, if not trying to get them fired.
Yeah, not even
Or
fired,
destroy their
prosecuted.
lives
Prosecuted.
when we have no information.
Yeah. And now having that information, if a pit bull was being aggressive with me, known for attacking kids, and started coming after me, I'd be kicking the shit out of that pit bull. And
Dude,
I love dogs.
but I'm gonna defend myself.
Yeah. Pit bulls will fuck you up if you let them
Yeah.
attack you.
I got a German Shepherd. If he wanted to fucking annihilate me, he's gonna.
And you know what? At the end of the day, if you're a dog owner, you know if your dog is an asshole. Especially
Absolutely.
if that is the kind of dog you have. Not a pit bull, but one with that kind of history. You know your dog's
Yeah,
an
because
asshole.
it doesn't really matter the breed. But
Now, if I was the person who owned that dog and the cop kicked the shit out of my dog, I'd be happy he didn't have to shoot my dog.
true.
Because most cops, if they're getting attacked by a dog, they're going to kill it.
Yeah, I don't know what you'd think animal control might have showed up or something. But this is my point: is as a society, we're reacting to things that we have no business reacting to, and sometimes we're putting ourselves into where we're part of it now.
And this
Where we're
comes
calling
down
for
to the
someone's
issue
job or
of,
someone's life.
yeah, this comes down to the issue of we have, on an individual basis, way too much information.
Oh,
And
well, way
not
too
in terms
much,
of
but
things
not
like
enough.
education and things like that, but you can go on the internet and have everything on earth streamed to your cell phone at any given moment.
Mhm.
We did not. Now, again, this is my opinion. I don't have any science to back this up.
We're assholes.
We did not evolve to have access to this many people this often. Humans are impressionable creatures. We're supposed to learn from the shit that we run into, but we're not supposed to run into this much shit.
But I also think we're coming of age, right?
As
when,
like
when
as a
we
species,
were growing
yeah.
up, yeah, when we were growing up, what was your news source or anything like that was the news,
Yeah, it's
and they
Channel
would have to
3 or
put in
whatever, you know.
3, 5, and 7, right?
Walter Cronkite.
And they would have to put in their due diligence to figure out the backstory, because if they fucked it up, they would be their ass.
Yeah, and you know, that wasn't a 24-hour news feed. It was,
No.
was it
like
72 hours?
Well, it was like every 12. You had it morning and afternoon, and you had
Yeah, but it
breaking
wasn't
news.
constant.
No, but nowadays, even the news doesn't even fact check their shit, and they come back and do
No need.
editorials all the time.
No need, because
And
they could put
so-
something out at 10. They could be
Yeah.
wrong, and they can fix it at 10:30. It doesn't matter.
But they could fix it literally at 10:05.
The problem is now you have all these videos out of context floating around.
And so you have these people who are going out and they see this stuff and they're reading, and they're only getting little tidbits of the information. They're not doing any more research on top of that. And it's just, we're seeing it everywhere. You're seeing it, you're having issues with that throughout life. It's an interesting time, and are we going to come out of it to where we start having things like, I don't know. You used to have it to where media had to be, if there was a professional standard to where they had to be accurate, right? Nowadays, your media is uncontrolled. It's just fucking, it's a fire hose.
You know, well, that's a lot of good points, Griz, and I think that I might have a solution to all of our societal issues.
I have a feeling I know where this is going.
Yeah, the Matrix. So,
If so,
we
yeah,
Go
the week
ahead.
after this, guys, it might just be me. Because if Matrix 4 comes out and it sucks, Gerry will commit suicide. Because he'll take
It's actually
whatever
seppuku
number
in
of
that
red
case.
pills or blue pills or something, and he'll be dead.
If The Matrix 4 is terrible, it's not suicide at that point. It is seppuku.
That is suicide. It's just
Yes,
honorable.
but it's honor suicide. I can't face the world after that movie.
Have you
is
ever
bad.
done research into that?
Not really, but I know roughly what it's about. It's for Dishonored Samurai, right?
Well, not necessarily Dishonored.
I guess just, is it a soldier or what? I don't, tell me all about it.
Look, so it was Samurai, but there were multiple things to it, right? They could have fucked up and been Dishonored. That's one way. It could also be, usually you had a lord over you, and say he did something that you didn't agree with. Instead of voicing your opinion, you'd commit seppuku. Now, on that, so you'd stab in the knife in the intestines, right, and shoot it across, but you'd have your buddy there, ready to cut your head off. Now, you couldn't flinch when you stabbed yourself in the gut or cut, right? If you flinched,
Okay.
that was bad. But if your buddy was a good enough buddy, he'd cut your head off really quick.
Glad I live in modern times.
So that's some messed up shit. Like, well, Gerry, you're killing yourself. I'm gonna let you take your time on this one.
Even more reason.
Remember that time you stiffed me on that tip?
Even more reason for a modern Matrix. So let's break this down. Look at all these societal problems. Okay.
They wouldn't be here if this was a Matrix.
And why is that? What time frame in history do we go back to in the Matrix? Every time?
90s.
1999.
You don't know that we're going back to the 90s now.
The peak of human civilization.
So what?
And how do I know that's the case? Because Agent Smith said that's the peak.
So how long does it last after the 90s?
Oh, about 100 years. It breaks down every 100 years. Yeah. Well, actually, you know what? 1999. That's a confusing point.
Yeah.
That's a topic for another day.
No, it's not, bitch.
All right, fine. All right. So if the peak of human civilization is 99 and the
I don't think
Matrix
it's the peak
movie
of human civilization because we haven't had the birth of AI yet, but okay. We have, but not really. Not cognizant.
Yeah. So it's it's not the peak in terms of technology. It's the peak in terms of civilization and harmony. Think about the 90s. It was so boring that someone made the Matrix movie. Look at every movie in the 90s.
Yep.
It was either celebrating that boring or it was bucking the standard. And actually, I brought this up in our group message last week. 1999. Revolutionary in terms of movies. The only other time in history that had that many revolutionary movies was 1939. Think about...
I would say the 90s in general was a good decade for movies. But
well,
why was
generally
99
speaking, but
revolutionary?
1999. Think about what I actually brought up in the group message. Just think about most of the movies that you quote. Almost all of them are from 1999.
That's not true. Die Hard's not from 1999.
I said almost. You quote Die Hard like, I don't know, a fanatic. Like a serious cult fanatic. It's weird. It's like a Matrix. What are you looking up? The movie list?
What movies came out in 1999?
You got American
You have
Pie.
The Matrix. Fine.
Okay. The Matrix, obviously, number one that came out in 99.
I don't really quote The Matrix too much, but fine.
I do.
You do.
Actually, look, the Matrix quotes are pervasive in pop culture and society now.
Want to know the popular movies that came out in 99?
Yeah, let's go through the list.
Fucking crash and burn your theory.
No.
So besides The Matrix, you had The Insider, Magnolia, Cruel Intentions, Bicentennial Man, The World Is Not Enough, The Talented Mr. Ripley, and The 13th Warrior.
Yes,
Out
but
of those movies,
your list. Listen. You just listed "quote unquote" popular movies. Look at the list from 1999, not just the popular ones.
Okay. So
Fight Club,
you have
American
Wild Wild
Pie,
West.
Wild Wild West. Yeah.
You have Phantom Menace.
Yeah, Phantom Menace. Are you gonna tell me that's not serious?
Dude, there are people who debate that that's a fucking awful movie. The Mummy.
Those people are idiots. If you're listening, you're wrong. But look at how many memes come from all these movies.
Yeah, but would you have all these memes from the Phantom Menace if it wasn't a Star Wars movie? Entrapment.
That's my point. That's
The
my
Thomas
point.
Crown Affair, Random
Mhm.
Hearts, 10 Things I Hate About You,
10 Things I
Deuce,
Hate About You,
Deuce
cult
Bigelow,
classic. Deuce Bigelow, cult classic.
uh, Universal Soldier.
Yeah,
I don't
that's not the
quote
first
any of
Universal
these,
Soldier.
Barry.
You've got
Man
American
on the Moon.
Pie,
Yeah, all right. The Green Mile, American
American
Beauty,
Beauty.
Any Given Sunday.
Any Given Sunday is fantastic.
It is, but I don't quote it. American Pie did come out. I don't.
You're also forgetting to mention Fight Club, which I brought up.
Was Fight Club 99?
Yes, it was.
Oh, Boondock Saints came out in 99.
Boondock Saints, another one. Now, there's a point to this, guys. There's a point to this. I think that just the fact
Office
that
Space. All right, Fight Club
Office
did come out
Space,
in 99.
absolutely. Office Space is like way up there on the list of quotable movies.
Varsity
I'm a
Blues.
people person.
I don't want your sandwich.
So, just the fact that all these movies came out in 1999 is very indicative that that's the peak of human civilization. And here's why that's so important. We're probably already in the Matrix.
So sorry that that's your idea of peak of civilization.
That was a turning point in American and global history, 1999. You know what else happened after 1999 that was another turning point? Harambe died. He would have lived. He would have lived if 1999 didn't happen the way it did. That was a nexus event for us. We
How?
shifted to a new timeline. You ever hear of the Mandela effect?
Oh, God.
Have you?
I don't know. How does that have anything to do with Harambe?
We shifted into
He's
a
a national
timeline.
treasure.
We shifted into a timeline where Harambe had to die.
Harambe didn't have to die.
He had
That's
to
the
die.
point.
That's how this timeline goes.
He didn't hurt the kid.
No, he was saving the kid.
Yeah. So why did he have to die?
All right. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I'm not that much of a conspiracy theorist. But I
My
do love
point
the
is-
movies that came from 1999.
Yeah, whatever. My point is, if The Matrix 4 sucks, this is going to be a solo show.
It'll be Beautiful Bastard.
Yeah. Well, no, it's still Beautiful Bastards because I think everyone's a beautiful bastard.
You're going to have to get a cardboard cutout of me. You just have it sitting next to you.
I'll just Photoshop you and it's fine.
Here, I'll give you a pose for the cardboard cutout.
Sweet. You know what? Actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take Randy Marsh. Just have Randy Marsh on the other side.
That's going to be my Halloween costume eventually. For those of you who've never seen me with just a mustache, I'm Randy Marsh.
Here you go. We're going to put up a side-by-side comparison between Jerry and Randy Marsh.
Let's see it.
Jerry, do you
Let's
have
see
a
it.
wheelbarrow handy?
No, my nuts are just resting on the floor.
Well, now that Jerry brought up the Matrix and his nuts, but this conversation's completely over. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. We kind of went all over the place. If you want to hear more like this or more things like this, let us know. Maybe we'll throw a poll up and see if listeners have anything they want us to talk about.
Everybody loves polls. You guys are going to jump on it. I know it. Anyway, thanks for listening, guys.
Thank you again for listening to Beautiful Bastard. New episodes every Monday. Remember to like and subscribe. Come out to the coast. We'll get together. We'll have a few laughs.
Uh-oh. Someone's got a case of the Mondays.